Welcome! Today I would love to share a tool with you that completely changed the emotional flow in my life. So let's jump right into it. Before I started my journey of personal growth and transformation, my emotional flow looked a little bit like this. And something that I misunderstood back then, I would be judging myself by the events. So, for example, here, that would be a moment when things would go really well and really great. But I also like feel a little bit like it's too good to be true and very unfamiliar to some extent. And so I would unfortunately choose to self-sabotage this moment. And then it would kind of create a shift in my energy that leads to a situation where things decline. Until I hit another point, um, somewhere here, where things really had to change. Where I felt like, okay, that's not me. I'm not recognizing myself. I need to get myself out of this situation. Let's take action. And with that, I would create the momentum to elevate my emotional experience again until things feel too good to be true. And I would self sabotage myself. And for a long time, I was kind of focusing on the events itself and trying to figure out what was going wrong. And actually, what I figured out, taking 10 steps back, or more like 15 or 20, depending on the topic, I figured out that there's actually literature around this. And in this literature, this whole dynamic is a pattern that's described as roller coaster effect. And so in the roller coaster effect, there's like a consistency, more or less, um, of our peak points, of how great we allow things to get before we choose to self-sabotage them, before something happens that brings our energy down again. And it's described as a glass ceiling. And there would also be another term. So for those events that are more emphasizing the lower end of the scale. And depending to the literature, that's described as either the basement or rock bottom, depending to like how wide the journey got. And the emotions I was going through in between both would be described as the comfort zone. And actually, the comfort zone, it's, how do I say it best? It wasn't like always such a great place to be in, but it was somehow familiar. It felt safe. It felt I knew what to expect. Things were like kind of bouncing around on similar levels, and also like the highs and the lows. It was not that it was always the same situation or there was always the same person. It could be, but it could be very different scenarios. But for example, in its repetition, it will always go like to some point, and then something would happen and it would drop. And the big breakthrough that this brought for me when I understood that actually those points, the lows, the very lows, and the very highest, were not really the most essential part of this. Actually, the point that's the most interesting is what is happening before. What is creating? What is the moment that creates the change in the curve? And for example, on the way up, it would be something like here. um, that suddenly led to the situation that I decided like, okay, this is like feels too good to be true, or this is too scary or too amazing, or there must be something wrong. I'm just not seeing it right now, so let's self-sabotage. So, and from there it would go all the way down, until something would happen here, where I would feel like, okay, that's not happening. That's not me. I don't want to be at this point. Um, that's not for me. I'm taking massive action until I create the momentum to go back up. Until this point again. And what actually happened for me was a trigger. Something on the outside would happen that is creating a situation where I developed a specific, how do I say it best? Specific view on the situation where I would tell myself certain stories about what happened, or what didn't happen. And based on that stories, based on my beliefs about what the situation says, I would choose to self-sabotage myself. If you have this question, maybe some of you would say like, okay, I can see that sometimes I'm roller coastering around or I'm ping-ponging around to some extent, but I don't know what my triggers are. Um, I didn't either. Don't worry about that part. I didn't either. The way that worked for me, I leaned on something that's I would describe as hourly check-ins. So what's the magic and the function of the hourly check-ins? I have an alarm on my phone that's ringing every hour, and every hour I check in with myself. How do I feel? What's my energy level at? What happened before? How did I get here? What happened? Did I talk to anybody specific? Did I? What did I tell myself before? And so this created a lot of awareness for me about what those points are. And the more awareness I started to create about my ping-ponging around and about my roller coastering around, the more I was able to impact the fluctuation I'm going through. This is a day or a month or a year. If we work with our minds, when we start to work with, please make sure you pour a lot of love and a lot of compassion and a lot of patience. And if you have the capacity, some extra self-care into the process so it doesn't feel heavy or it doesn't feel sticky or dense. Starting to track your habits and your beliefs, starting to track this dynamic throughout the day. Next week, in the next week, we will be talking about, don't worry yet what to do with it. Next week, we are going to talk about triggers and what to do with triggers. So for this week, have a great week with lots of love, light, and connection.